All right, shalom friends, for another one of the webinar series that we are holding. And we just, before we started the recording, got an unsolicited compliment as to the quality and interest of our webinar series. But this is really a very special one. We are very grateful to Dr. Nachman Shai, Minister of Diaspora Affairs in the new Israeli government, for joining us this evening for what I believe will be not just an interesting meeting and discussion, but also an important one, because it addresses a topic that's close to our hearts, to the hearts of all Jews throughout the world. Because we have been, during a rocky period and a stormy period in terms of Israel-Diaspora relations, and one that caused, I think, concern to many here who are local, national, international leaders on this call, rabbis, cantors, lawyers, communal leaders, and activists, all of you. So thank you, Dr. Shai, for joining us. For those who do not know you, and in Israel, practically everybody knows Nachman Shai, because at least people of, who have lived through the Gulf War.
Of your age. Huh? Of your age.
Well, I think younger as well. So during the Gulf War, Dr. Nachman Shai was appointed to be the spokesperson of the IDF, and his nickname was Hamargia Haleumi, the national comforter, the national figure who put the public in Israel at ease, because there was one channel TV, and he was there. And he was there in his wonderful demeanor and in his wisdom and outreach approach, and has really earned a name for himself. But the more relevant name in terms of our session is his long record of senior positions that had to do with the Jewish people as a whole. When he headed the Israel office of the United Jewish Communities, the predecessor of the JFNA, the Jewish Federations of North America, and in the Knesset during the years that he served, heading the lobby, the caucus of Knesset members who were committed to strengthen the relationship with world Jewry. But a more personal note in terms of who Dr. Nachman Shai is, which brings him even closer to the topic at hand, is the fact that his parents, his late parents, Chava and Eliezer, were a couple of the founders and leaders of Harel congregation in Jerusalem, one of the leading congregations of Reform Judaism in Israel. And therefore, the spirit of pluralism is something that he has found at home. He didn't have to find it elsewhere, but he has become committed to it, and he is the first Minister of Diaspora Affairs in the Israeli cabinet. And there have been those who preceded him who were important political figures. He is the first Minister of Diaspora Affairs who, upon taking office, made the following declaration: the Jewish tent is big, and it can and should contain all the denominations and communities of the Jewish people. As Minister of the Diaspora, I'm committed to the State of Israel being equally open to all Jewish denominations. No one should be taking for granted that statement, and knowing Dr. Nachman Shai, no one should assume that this is just what we call in Hebrew min hapeh velachutz, just lip service. This is what Nachman Shai believes in, and this is what he's committed to. So before we ask him to launch this meeting, let me just say that I'm grateful, as always, to our co-sponsors. These webinar series are conducted with the co-sponsorship of Ruach Hidush, rabbis and cantors for religious freedom and equality, and a number of the rabbis who are on the executive committee and active in Ruach Hidush, and others who may still become active in Ruach Hidush are on this call. J-Plan, the Jewish Pluralism Legal Action Network, and co-chairs of the J-Plan are also on this Zoom meeting, and the American Association of Jewish Lawyers and Jurists. So thank you all. And Dr. Nachman Shai, let me start with the question of that statement which you made early on in your tenure. How do you see the Israel-Diaspora relationship, the Israel-Diaspora challenging relationship, in terms of the questions that you addressed, the big Jewish tent?
Uri?
Yes.
I was disconnected for a while, especially when you talked about me. I didn't hear too much, but I think I captured half of it. The rest of it, I trust you. Thank you. Thank you very much. The first one was when you mentioned that my bar mitzvah took place in a reform shul, not far from Kilat Ariel, that you probably know or remember very well. And so since bar mitzvah, I am committed to at least close to the reform movement. And then many years later, my father and less my mother were involved in the reform in reform congregation, again, not far from our house. So this is very much in my blood, I would say. But I now represent the state of Israel, so I am pluralistic in my attitude to the three denominations. And actually, I think that you started to read my first encounter with the three denominations on my first day. I called the three chief rabbis, Blumenthal and Jacobs and Hauer, and I introduced myself. I asked for their blessing to my this new position, and I also mentioned that this is a kind of a new era, or at least a new approach by the government and myself as the minister in charge of the diaspora affairs in relating to the three denominations. And since then, we've been practicing that and implementing that in our daily work. It's not just words, those are deeds as well. Last but not least was a letter that I sent to the Prime Minister at the eve of Rosh Hashanah, where I put in writing my request that the government, I have submitted a draft of a cabinet decision to return to the original trajectory of the Kotel compromise, endorsed by the government in 2016, suspended by the government a year later in 2017. And my message was very clear and simple. It's time to return to the first decision made by the government, to the 2016, and eliminate the other one, which means let's return to what we believe, all we believe in, including, by the way, Naftali Bennett, the Prime Minister, that at the time insisted on accepting and endorsing the original decision made at the time by the government. And I believe this is the right thing to do. And I intend to proceed on the same track. And I actually believe that this government has a majority. I think that this is most of the government ministers, almost all of them, will support it once, and if and once it comes to a vote. I hope it will. I have in constant discussions and contact with the Prime Minister about that, and I believe I'm confident that it will be done. I don't see any reason at this stage not to. Of course, I'm not the last to make the decision. It still needs the Prime Minister endorsement, but I believe so, and I actually invite you all, if you want, to turn to the Prime Minister, to government ministers, to the public, and urge them that this is the way to open the Kotel for every denomination, every voice, every person, men, women, no no reason to discriminate anyone any longer. And as I used to say, in the past 3 years, past 3 months since I started my present position, is the Jewish tent is big enough to have everyone inside. We are not going to turn our back to anyone, and we invite actually the entire Jewish communities or Jewish world to come and to get together around Israel. There were times, and I'm sure that you, my friends, know that very well, that Israel was taken out of the Jewish public discourse because it was quite controversial, at least in the past few years, as Uri kindly and diplomatically mentioned. But this was the case, and I was following it from the opposition benches in the Knesset, and I was very much, I did my best, and made my contribution by calling upon the government to change its policy towards the Jewish world, and especially the other two denominations. It didn't work well, but now it's time to look at it differently. Also, it was a mix of political and religious considerations. In my view, Bibi's decision to turn Republican by openly supporting the Republican Party and Republican president was a grave mistake. We were very careful for years not to choose a part in the American political scene, American political arena. We were looking always for a bipartisan support to Israel, both Republicans and Democrats. We are neither nor. And by choosing one of them, we in a way carried a certain, or delivered a certain message to the other party. Well, you are second. This was a grave mistake. And I hope now, following the formation of a new government in Israel, where the message is that this is a united government, government of unity, which holds parties from the right to the left, from right, center, and left. 8 parties altogether, including, for the first time, literally in our history, Arab Party, which is a very important news, if you ask me. Arabs have been very careful not to join any coalition. They don't have this. We do have, by the way, an Arab government minister, a Druze government minister. 9 of the government ministers are female. A huge number of female director generals of government ministries. There is a very significant diversity in the present government, which is part of the message that we've been sending to the general public in Israel and abroad. I think it's extremely important when we address the American audience or the American public, and of course the Jewish community, where we say it's neither right nor left. We are all committed to the same goal, all parties, to rebuild Israel, to rehabilitate the economy, and to look forward based on common goals. It's not an easy situation. You know that 2 Jews may easily voice 3 different opinions, if not more. It's true, yes. But in our case, and that is a very important development, we are able to sit together week after week, now for over 3 months, and to reach a compromise, or not more than one so far. We disagree with each other on many matters: the territories, the future of the Israeli-Palestinian relations, 2 nation states, yes, no. I can give you more and more. The economy, how do we approach economy, equality within the Israeli society, here and there. Of course, that's the way it is. This is not our dream. This was not our political dream, but this is the reality now. We understand that in order to really get out of the situation of 4 elections campaign within 2 years, which was a disaster. I can't even describe to you what does this mean to go to general elections every 6 years without budget, without the economy, very low economic activities. And suddenly we are all united, knowing very well that we depend on each other, but together, since we are in the same, sharing the same dream of return to the right track and literally rebuilding the country after, not only because of the corona, but other things that have happened in Israel in the past even decade, especially within the Israeli society. You know Israel pretty well. The social fabric of the Israeli society was twisted, was distorted, and we have to return to normal life, in which every group, every tribe in the Israeli society has a role, and we can function together with carrying the same goal. That's not simple as it sounds sometimes. This is something that we have to work. It's like a couple. We have to work on that every day to keep our marriage. And I feel yesterday there was a cabinet meeting and I was watching everyone running in the room looking for a compromise. Yes, excuse me, let's do this, let's do that. And I said to myself, not only as a participant, but as an observer, this is a dream how it works, because finally the Prime Minister was able to submit a certain resolution and everyone voted for. And we didn't fight with each other and we didn't scream at each other. We realized that we have a mission here. It's sorry for that. It's a holy mission to bring the country back to normalcy, to function well. And we can do it. We've been doing it for quite a number of years. So we are just open a new chapter. As Uri rightly mentioned, it's not only, I think you did, or if not, I should mention that too, that we are now in process of creation of a renewed Judaism department in our ministry. Again, this is a major development. And I said that not only because you are my audience tonight. We've been saying it to other audiences, and you can assume what was the reaction. But this was one of the major achievements of us in the coalition agreement, because some of the Knesset, the coalition members, and even the government minister are not very happy about that, if I put it mildly. But this is it. We are committed to create this renewed Judaism department in our office. We have been given a budget for that. You can assume this is not easy to get money from the finance ministry, but it was done. And now we're building this a new department. Hopefully that within few months, certain organizations within Israel, out of the country, certain initiatives, again, in Israel, out of the country, will be benefited from that budget. We're just building it, that it will be properly done. But again, this is something that I hope you appreciate the importance of it, even the significance of it in the country and out of the country. So I think that I covered, first of all, the Kotel, this new the branch and the political developments. Of course, we are in the Yamim Noraim. We very special days in our Jewish life. So we have our Cheshbon Nefesh. We have to think about the past year and the future year, and this is the opportunity really to ask ourselves, what can we do in order to better the life of the Israeli people, Jews, Arabs, center, periphery, Sephardi, Ashkenaz, from all corners, how to fulfill our public role to govern the country properly, openly, transparently, and also to conduct a certain dialogue with the public, to listen to the people, to hear their opinion, to cooperate with them, not only by making decisions or so-called giving orders, but two-way communication between us and the people of Israel. Again, this is, as I said before, it's a new stage, it's a new chapter in Israel political life. I think that in this point, Uri, I've talked too much.
Well, that's quite all right, because we are interested in your vision, and you have certainly provided us additional building blocks. So a point of information that is important for you to consider, that came in via the chat, which I expected. It's interesting that you were referring to the Renewal of Judaism department. And in terms of terminology, of course, most of our audience is familiar with the renewal movement. So the renewal movement shouldn't be confused with the kind of pluralistic department that you are building, but also the reconstructionist movement. You have on this call lay leaders, scholars, Professor Mel Scalt, rabbis, from the reconstructionist movement as well, and Ruach Chidush, Rabbis and Kenters for Religious Freedom and Equality, is unique in the sense that it brings together Orthodox, conservative, reform, reconstructionist, and renewal rabbis and Kenters, all committed to the cause of religious freedom and equality in Israel. So it would be wonderful, and I'm sure that the leaders and rabbis on this call will be happy to assist you in getting yourself acquainted with these other streams in Judaism, which are significant, which have scores of congregations and rabbis and Kenters, and wonderful, exciting, and creative approach to Judaism. So you ended on an upbeat note, and I want to add to the upbeat note by sharing with you and our audience the question that we asked and the responses of the adult Jewish population in Israel to your new vision. And what is clear is that when we quoted that very phrase on the big tent and equality to all streams in Judaism, and asked how do people react to that? Do they very much support it, very much oppose it? Clearly, the large majority of Israeli adult Jews support. Nachman, you don't have to take a picture of it. I
like it so much. I know.
Yes,
you're going to give it to me,
but like you are going to even like it better, because when we look at the actual breakdown of the figures, obviously the Zionist Orthodox are not excited about pluralism. But there is a chunk of that population, 29%, that supports your vision. 29% is not something to sneeze at. But the two traditional subgroups in Israel, the traditional religious and the traditional not religious, as you can see, 60% and 82% support your vision of the big tent. And among Israel's secular Jews that make up the majority, the largest group of Israelis, 91% support. And in terms of the political significance of those figures, what you see is that all parties that make up your coalition, not all your political partners, but all the voters, the constituency of your political partners in this coalition, from Yamina to Meretz, all support it, including 66% of Yamina voters. And the interesting thing for the future, for you, for the Labour Party, and for other parties, is that those who are currently saying, we don't know whom we are going to vote for, 80, what is it? The figure is hiding from me, but 80 or 86% are supporting the notion of pluralism. And in spite of what many Likud leaders are claiming, we are traditional, we are the natural partners of the Haredi parties, etc., 64% of Likud voters want to see a pluralistic approach to the relationship between Israel and the diaspora. So this is encouraging. And the question to you is, and in a minute we'll come to a number of questions that already our participants have asked on the chat, but one additional question to you is, you know, you speak about the wall, but we know that it's not going to be easy because your coalition is based on agreements that require consensus, and every one of those partners, such as the Minister of Religious Services, who today announced he opposes the notion of constitutional protection of the principle of equality, and he will not support it and he will prevent it from passing. So the question is, how realistically do you think that progress can be made? For instance, in your role as Minister of Diaspora Affairs, how can one seriously think of rehabilitating the relationship and building a healthy, strong partnership if most of the children growing up in the Jewish community in America today would be told you are not eligible to legally marry in Israel if you make the decision to make Aliyah? Because it's the chief rabbinate that decides who can marry and who cannot in Israel. So realistically, how do you see your ability beyond the Kotel to make progress in terms of reshuffling this deck and introducing a policy across the board that stands for what you believe in?
Uri, this is the Kotel issue is in the coalition agreements. And this is a commitment by all the coalition partners. I didn't introduce to you two of my staff. It's down there. I don't know. Well, where do you see his face on the screen? It's Lapid.
Lapid introduced himself. It was wonderful seeing him. And yes, I'm grateful to Tracy.
And Tracy too. Yeah, but just it will be polite. And also they are going to carry any conclusion or from this meeting on. And this dialogue only started. It will go on. Uri, I need your help. Honestly, I need your help, and in the Jewish world and in Israel too, I need your help because we need some public pressure as well. And also what you've just done, showing the outcome or the results of your survey is a message to us politicians. Politicians understand the numbers. They know how to read those numbers, and they said something to us. It said that it's based on a kind of national consensus in the country, over 50%, even 60, 70, 80, 90%, which is a very strong message to the government and to my colleagues in the cabinet. So first of all, as I said, the Kotel is in the coalition agreement, so it's part of it, and I haven't broken any agreement when I submitted my proposal, and I intend to continue. This is not the last bill that I'm going to submit. I'm going to do more on that track. I'm not sure that they will all be adopted by the government, but again, I think they should be in the center of the public discourse in Israel. It's time to make decisions on those issues. Of course, you all understand politics. The Haredim, the ultra-Orthodox are not members of this coalition. It makes our life much easier. And honestly, we should take advantage of that at this stage. They did not want to join the coalition from their own reasons. They choose to go to the other side. Okay, there is a certain cost for that. There's no doubt about it. We are not committed to any political alliance with them, at least at this stage. So we are free to pass resolutions and to make decisions based on our will, not based on their will, and that makes the whole difference. And I should tell you that for many, many years, the Haredim, the ultra-Orthodox, I have nothing against them, by the way, I respect them very much. But since they are not members of the coalition, we are free to make decisions according to the coalition agreements that we have made between ourselves. So that, I hope it answers your question. But again, I'm not naive, and I'm old enough to know how politics works. It will take time and efforts. It's a struggle, okay? But we are ready for struggle. Merav Michaeli, the chair lady of my party, Omer Bar-Lev, we are three from the Labour Party. We have Meretz next to us. We have Blue and White. We have Yesh Atid, Yair Lapid, all the way supports us, 100%. Actually, I should give him credit for he was leading those issues in the negotiation between him and Bennett. It was Yair Lapid, and I honestly respect him very much for that. So we have a majority within the government, but we are, as you know, the votes in the government should be based on consensus between the two blocks, okay? The right block and sometimes the wrong one, and the center left one. But that's the way it is. As I said before, compromise. This is the key word. So I hope very much that we will be able to find more and more compromises on those issues and others, and to open the dialogue, to open a dialogue between you and you rightly mentioned also between us and the reconstruction movement. Yes, they should be part of this a new atmosphere, a new environment. I'm sorry I haven't mentioned them before. This is a way to look for, and by the way, if we hear about other Jewish movements within the big tent with a renewed approach or a renewed approach towards Judaism, they are partners of us as well.
I'll be glad to connect your staff with the leadership of the renewal and the reconstructions movement. I think it'll be of mutual interest and benefit. A number of people in this discussion are very concerned about the wall. And you have made a clear commitment, but at the same time, they're asking, it isn't just about the egalitarian area being, updated and developed, etc. There is violence going on. There are thugs, as one of the rabbis asking, there are thugs who are attempting to violently disrupt the ability of the women of the wall and of the egalitarian minyanim that are praying on the Ezrat Israel side. What can you do? What do you intend to do about this?
I support the women of the Kotel, and I urge the police to keep them safe when they come to the Kotel. They can pray their own way. At this stage, they only come to the Rachava, where they are separated, men and women are separated, but we are now talking about finally preparing and opening the other Rechava in the southern part of the Kotel for men and women that will be able to pray together, which I believe we should respect. And that again, that will be done. That's part of it. And I'm also been in touch with the police. We have issue with the Kotel, the rabbi of the Kotel about that. But the police, this is their commitment and responsibility that those women will be able to safely pray in the part of the Chava, which is dedicated at this stage only to women. And as I said before, I'm not provoking, I'm not trying to provoke anything. I'm not looking for any internal strife around the Kotel. This is not the right place. Leave it for the Knesset or somewhere else. But if they want to come and pray their own way, they should feel safe and able to do it in the place dedicated to women.
Thank you.
I saw any remarks on chat, Uri.
Pardon me? There are plenty, yes, quite.
No, I saw that. Yeah, there are plenty.
Yes.
What can I do? You should...
Well, maybe we should conclude that this should not be the last dialogue that we hold.
For sure not.
Good.
No, not at all.
So another question takes us beyond the pluralism issues and is expressing concern about the relationship with the younger generation that are subjected not only to the challenges on the religious sphere, which it's important to stress, Israelis en masse and the participants from the larger Jewish communities are on the same page. They all want to see the implementation of Israel's Declaration of Independence commitment to freedom of religion and conscience and to equality. But there are other issues of Israeli policy where we are not on the same page. And they are subjected to anti-Semitic attacks, and they are submitted to criticism of Israel. How do you reconcile that gap on the non-religious issues, on the Palestinian issues, on the social issues?
We have so many challenges now, that we have to handle them. Unfortunately, at the same time, we can't postpone anything. So, but we try to. I'm very honest and open with you. We are not going to see any progress on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, at least in the next 2 years. Lapid said we will try in his term, he will replace Bennett within 2 years. I'm not sure. I will try. We will try. As long as this situation continues, we will face more and more international criticism, both by even friendly states, international organizations, and individuals. We know where we stand vis-a-vis the social media. Not in a good place. But what I'm trying to do, first of all, is to listen, to dedicate as much as possible time and energy to the young American Jews, students and others. And by the way, I invite your advice how to approach them. We are trying to produce messages, again, shaped for these young people to use social media networks because they consume them and they don't follow print media or even television. Their communication is different than, if I may say, others. When I see the participants of this conference call, yes, we would like to, and then let me tell you something. Israel is much better than the way it's being presented in the social media, especially after the last military operation in Gaza. It's much better. It's still a democracy. It's still a democracy. There were elections in Israel, and in those elections, a new government was elected, and it was done democratically by the people of Israel. And democracy is a key word for everything going on in Israel. And that should be clear to those young, progressive, liberal Jews that are very critical of Israel at this stage. And as I said before, it's a diverse society. And the only society which invited and opened its door for over 150,000 Jews from Black Africa, gave them a state, a country, a nationality, a citizenship, everything. And also, if I speak in general to Jewish immigrants from the entire world, following the Second World War and since then, millions of Israelis are immigrants, and they found their place in Israel where they started new life. We should emphasize the Israeli culture, the Israeli science, the Israeli high-tech, the Israeli huge achievements in any area. Yes, there is an issue with the Palestinians. And what I'm trying to do, and I hope you will follow suit, and I hope every educator, Jewish education, and non-Jewish as well, in the United States, will teach them the history of the Jewish people in Eretz Israel, in the state of Israel, where it started. Where did it start? How did it start? In 1948 and in 1967. How this Israel-Palestinian conflict started, and by whom? And why don't we remind them and ourselves that at least 2 Israeli prime ministers were extremely generous. One of them was Ehud Barak, and the other was Ehud Olmert. The two Ehuds, both of them went a long way towards the Palestinians, longer than any government before and after, offering them almost everything they were looking for, almost. But this was not enough. They wanted all. Well, what can we do? We have to reach a compromise, not only within Israel, but with our neighbors as well. We made a compromise with Egypt. We have peace with Egypt. Our prime minister officially met with Ahmed Sisi, the president of Egypt today, which was a breakthrough. It hasn't done for a long time. We do have peace with Jordan. And for peace, we pay. And we did pay. And I hope young American Jews who are so critical of Israel, of what we are doing in the territories, and sometimes I'm not very proud of it, but at the same time, I'm telling you based on my military experience, also a political experience, because I'm a member of the Defense and Foreign Affairs Committee for over a decade. This army is, I wouldn't say the most moral army in the world. I don't know how do you rate moral, but it's a very moral army. And the question of purity of arms, which means when are you shooting at your enemy and when are you try to kill him, in which conditions, and when do you use your weapon and what for? We are very strict, we are very careful. We try to do our best in a modern world. In a modern world, we are now engaged in a new era of modern wars, asymmetric wars, where citizens are involved. Sometimes willingly, sometimes unwillingly, okay? And we have invested, really we've spent in the last military campaign in Gaza 3 months ago, over $1 billion, just to make sure that we are using the most accurate weapons on earth. Believe me, the most accurate ones, most of them were provided by the United States, just to make sure that we hit the right target and not the wrong one. Just to make sure that civilians will not be killed unless they are involved. I don't know if you followed the news, but the last operation by the American forces in Afghanistan, before they withdrew, they fired a rocket from the air to the ground, and they killed 10 people by mistake. They made a mistake. They were not the right people they were looking for. Okay, it happened. Just imagine it was the Israeli Defense Forces. Just imagine. But I don't blame the Americans. It happens. It happens in wars. And the Hamas in Gaza and Hezbollah in the north are doing everything they can to get mixed within the civilians. Kindergarten, schools, community centers, hospitals. They purposely positioned their weapons next to them. So when 65 kids were killed in the last operation in Gaza, you should, as well as I am, very sorry for that and cry for them. But I assure you that hundreds would have killed. We would have been killed unless we were so careful. I'd like that this message will be shared with those young, liberal, progressive American Jews that criticizes Israel for this operation, for that operation. And I also advise them to ask the Hamas why every single night, the time in Israel now is 7:45, so within an hour or two, 1 or 2 rockets will be fired from Gaza into Israel. But they don't need more than 1 or 2. And within seconds, hundreds of thousands of Israelis will be rushing into their bomb shelters to be protected areas. Hundreds of thousands of them will sleep there tonight because wanted to sleep safely. And no one asked the Hamas, why do you do that? What for? Only 1 single rocket is enough. And by the way, they probably will be intercepted anyhow by Iron Dome that you American people helped us very much to develop in Israel. Thank you very much for that. But I'd like those points, and I can mention more and more of them, to be clear to the young American Jews and not to every American, Jew and non-Jew, doesn't matter. But those target group that we are working very much with, because they are the future leaders of maybe of America, but probably of the American Jewish community. And we need them to understand what we are doing. And we want to answer the questions, Uri. We are not hiding away. We have answers to every question they ask. And if I feel like to apologize, or if I feel that I have to be blamed for something, okay, so I'm to be blamed for that. And I will assume any responsibility. But at the same time, remember that the war we are fighting and the one with Gaza as well are fully legitimate. Thank you.
Well, obviously, this could start a whole new conversation, which may not be resolved as easily as the issues of Jewish pluralism. But so let me go back to a safer ground, dealing with Jewish pluralism, but still taking it to its sort of borderline areas. Rabbi Professor Michael Chernick, who is a great example of the pluralistic reality that exists in North America, is a Yeshiva University rabbinic graduate, Yitzhak Elchanan Musmach, and professor of Talmud, and has been for a number of years, was the chair of Ruach Hidush, Rabbis and Cantos for Religious Freedom and Equality in Israel. He's asking a question about the Abu Yadaya. He's saying American Jewish religious denominational leaders and their congregants are offended by Israel's non-recognition of the communities like the Abu Yadaya of Uganda or the Adat Israel of Guatemala. How would you suggest that this situation be rectified? It's also an example of an area that is of much greater level of awareness in North American congregations and support, and rather limited awareness in Israel.
I've been conducting so far maybe 50 or over 50. I don't know where's Tracy, I don't see her, but she'll give me the exact number. How many Zoom conversations and other meetings I've had with American rabbis and non-American rabbis. This is the first time I was asked about it. The first time. This is the first time. And as a government minister, then as a new government minister, I haven't got there too yet, because I have other priorities. And I feel that I'm familiar with communities like Abu Yadaya and others. Abu Yadaya and others. And I've tried not to do it so far. And maybe I'm wrong, but in 3 months, you can't do everything you want. And I think that the first priority was to deal with the three denominations, with the Kotel, with the conversion, with other matters, in addition to what I have to do anyhow as a government minister. So I can't give you any answer yet. I have to learn where it is. And the Ministry of Absorption, by the way, I think it's just allowed a number of Bnei Menashe to come to Israel. We are very careful about that. Where they need to perform a conversion here or there. It's not an easy matter, but I'm first of all, I'm not in charge of it. But secondly, if you believe that I should, okay, so give me some time. I'm not in a hurry. This is not a case or a matter that stands in the center of our attention at this stage. Excuse me.
Well, this is actually very interesting, because the Bnei Menashe, the difference between Bnei Menashe and the Abu Yadaya and the congregation in Guatemala is Bnei Menashe are sponsored by Orthodox rabbis, whereas the Abu Yadaya conversions have been conducted under the auspices of the conservative movement, and the community in Guatemala is supported by the World Union for Progressive Judaism, and the conversions were done under its auspices. So in some ways, it does take us back to the very basic challenge that you are facing. But you have, I think, sensitized our audience today to something very important. Namely, they may have to do a lot more in terms of educating you. You are asking our audience to educate the younger generation, their children, students on campuses, etc., as to the realities in Israel, I think our audience may go away from this meeting, from this conference call, with a challenge to do better in terms of reaching out to you and to other Israeli leadership on this issue. So maybe this does bring us, or provides us with a segue closer to the end of our meeting, namely, what are the things, you have hinted to it, but maybe you want to be more specific. What are the things that the audience that's committed to Israel and is committed to the well-being of world Jewry on this call and the communities that they represent could be doing to assist you in pursuing that path, which is so necessary, but yet you are the first one to launch it? So some ideas for the leaders on this call as to what you would like them to, what you would like to see them doing. And in response to Professor Chernik, in what ways can they sensitize you to the fact that actually there is a widespread concern among many congregations in America, many communities in America, regarding, for instance, the Abu Yadaya, which in Israel we are just sort of unaware.
I'm a good student, Uri. I'm ready to learn what I don't know. Even in my age, I'm ready to learn. And I guess I'm missing a bit here or in other issues as well. I'm not able to cover everything, and I don't claim I know everything. So what I suggest is, first of all, I invite you to share with me any idea, any message. I'd like to get all the questions if possible, because I see more and more questions coming in. Someone was asking about the Anusim now, spread in Latin America, and I think there are around 35 million Jews around, not Jews, so excuse me, 35 million people around the globe, and there were at least two works that I'm familiar with that was done by the Ministry of Diaspora in the past, and I haven't touched them yet. I said, okay, keep it for the second half of the year, not at the beginning. No, Uri, that's the way it is. You have to, you've been an executive. You have to decide what your priorities are. That's the way it is. So, but I'm not. I don't want to ignore it, especially when Professor Chernik asked me about it, and other colleagues and friends of mine are interested to hear my opinion. So I assure you that I will look at it, and I'll come back to not only to all the questions that were directed to me, but also in general. I'm ready to listen to you, even individually. Don't exaggerate. But if you have something to say to me, our office is open, is available. I can assure you every question will be answered. Every phone call will be answered. Any mail will be answered. And just draw my attention to any kind of activity or issue that you believe I should be dealing with. I'm not sure I can do everything. Again, as you realize, there are other things. And by the way, we didn't mention Corona and COVID, which takes 30–40% of every government minister time, more or less. And it's true about Israel, it's true about other states around the globe, the COVID-19, for example, the minor issue, but you may guess it keeps us busy as well. And more, but again, if you ask me what can you do with me and not for me, is sharing every concern, every issue, every topic that you have in mind, that you believe should be on my agenda, all the way. Go ahead. And I assure you, it will be tackled by me and my staff, and you will be answered. And then sometimes it will be a kind of an open dialogue between you and us as a result of it. I guess, Uri, you can be the point person. It can be done directly as well. It doesn't matter, but I prefer that will be done maybe through you. You know where to reach me and how. But if you write me, or if you turn to me, again, I'm in a way, a kind of representative of you in Israel, in the Knesset, in the political arena, in the government. Uri, I'm not taking your job, I believe. Now I have enough on my plate anyhow. But if you need a senator or a congressman in Israel, his name is Nachman Shai. And before we close, Uri, I should wish everyone Shana Tova and Gmar Chativa Tova.
Just before, Nachman, before you close, yes. One last question that is directly connected with your role. Because there has been a discussion at the Knesset today about amending the nation-state law with regard to equality. But there is an issue that is not being discussed with regard to amending the nation-state law, and that is, one second, sorry. I'm sharing the wrong, one second.
Bureau, so cemetery or something.
Yeah.
That's not a message for the new year.
No. This is it. Okay. So here is the problem. Article 6 of the nation-state basic law is a far cry from the original clause, and the title is Connection to the Jewish People. And I don't know whether you had a chance to actually sink your teeth into this issue. The current language of the law regarding the connection to the Jewish people is in some ways not just a far cry from the original, but I think a level of insult. This is a one-sided approach. The state shall act within the diaspora to strengthen the affinity between the state and members of the Jewish world. The state shall act to preserve the cultural, historical, and religious heritage of the Jewish people among Jews in the diaspora. This is a one-sided approach. Israel will teach diaspora Jews, about the religious heritage. It will unilaterally strengthen the affinity. And here is what it was originally, and I hope that you may consider asking to amend the law to that original intention. Anchor the deep principled commitment of the state of Israel to the Jewish diaspora, Israel's foundations as a state of the whole Jewish people, renewing the historical covenant among all world Jews, strengthen the bond of diaspora Jewry to Israel and vice versa. It was about a reciprocal relationship. It was about mutuality, and the same forces that work against pluralism worked to sort of neutralize that clause that was based on reciprocity and mutuality, and basically said, we are not interested in Israel in learning about what the diaspora has to teach us, what it can enrich us in terms of understanding of Judaism. This is what we shall tell them the Jewish heritage is about. So going and sort of closing the meeting with the point that we started, the mutuality of relationship is an area that needs to be corrected in the nation-state law. It's a concern of the diaspora no less than those who are worried about the lack of a principle of equality regarding Israel's non-Jews. So with that, parting words, a parting message from you, Dr. Nachman Shai, and thanking you really on behalf of all of us for being so open, honest, and forthcoming and interested in maintaining the relationship. The last word is yours.
First of all, I should mention that I voted against the nation-state law, okay? I was voted against because I thought it was needless. We have the statement of independence, the independence declaration, and we didn't need that law. It was a mistake, but it had a huge majority in the Knesset without us. Not a huge, but there was a majority for the. So now try to change this bill is like will be like a changing the foundations of the state of Israel suddenly. I mean, I don't even, I wouldn't get close to it. Uri, forgive me for that, but I don't want to touch it. Leave it as is, and we'll do what we believe in. That's what I can tell you. We don't need anything to do with this bill. It was already voted by the Knesset, confirmed by the Knesset. How applicable it is, I don't know. It caused so much damage in the relationship between Israel and the between Israelis, between Jews and Arabs, between Jews and Druze. Why should we bring it back to the table, to our agenda? I don't think it's wise. To be honest with it like that. Let me look at it again, but it's really not necessary at this stage. Beyond that, again, as I tried to say before, I mean, I'm so thankful to you for this discussion, for this meeting, for those questions that some of them I saw coming and disappearing. Oh, someone said kol hakavod. That's very kind. I don't know who it is, but again, I thank you very much. Oh, that's nice, a compliment. I always like it. No, but I think the fact that your survey was very encouraging to me. It shows that I'm running on the right track. I do it every morning on my treadmill, but now I feel like I'm doing it even politically. So thank you for that. Thank you for everyone who took 1 hour of your busy time and was ready to listen to me. And I appreciate that very much. As I said before, this is just the first meeting between us, the first Zoom or the first conference call. There'll be more. I'm available. My staff is available for you. This is our public duty, but also it comes deep from our hearts that we believe that we should represent you, your opinions, and even political views in Israel. Don't hesitate to turn to me, ask questions, challenge me, challenge my staff, and I assure you that we will do our best to respond. So I wish everyone Shana Tova, Gmar Chatima Tova. I'll think about you when I stand in shul within 48 hours. It's not a reform congregation, by the way. In our community, I go to an Orthodox shul. Excuse me, Uri and all my colleagues here. It doesn't mean that I'm associated with the Orthodox, but this is the closest one. And I have to walk there back and forth a few times during Yom Kippur. So this is an Orthodox community, but let's say modern Orthodox, relatively to other Orthodox communities in the country. So before you discover it by yourself, I don't betray the reform movement, but this is the one available for me. So Shana Tova, everyone. Toda Rabba. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Toda Rabba to you.
Tiva v'chatima tova. We are all grateful to you and look forward to continuing the dialogue and the partnership and cooperation. Toda, shalom to all. And in 3 weeks, we'll hold the next webinar actually focusing on the findings and the conclusions and the directions that the new 2021 Israel Religion and State Index point to. So I hope to see you all. Thank you again, not only to you, Dr. Shai, but to your staff, wonderful cooperative staff, Tracy and Nofar, and it was good to see Lapid earlier on this call. Shalom, shalom.